One winter evening, Henry's driver spoke to him with some exciting news. "Tomorrow night, we are to pull the Flying Kipper," the driver said. "And if we pull it well, maybe the Fat Controller will let you test out some Welsh coal." "I hope so," said Henry excitedly. The next night, Henry arrived at the docks. Many fishing ships were unloading crates of fish. Some of the fish went to the market, while the others were loaded onto a special train to take elsewhere. The railwaymen called this train the Flying Kipper. Henry coupled up to the train, the last door banged, the guard blew his whistle, and Henry let off steam. The icy rails caused Henry to slip at first, but the hot steam melted the ice. At last, he started moving. Come along," called Henry to the trucks. "Don't make such a fuss! Don't make such a fuss!" cried the trucks. The light from Henry's lamp shone on the snow, and his fire was glowing nicely. "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" sang Henry. He was having a wonderful time. The trucks were heavy, and the icy rails caused Henry to slip occasionally, but he puffed on bravely. Up ahead, a signal was forced down by snow and ice, and the points were frozen over against Henry. "All clear, Henry," said the driver. "Full steam ahead." "Peep, peep," whistled Henry. Further down the track, a train was waiting for Henry to pass. The driver and fireman joined the guard in the brake van. This is some good cocoa." "The Kipper is due," said the driver. "Come on, fireman, let's get back to our engine." "But I haven't finished my cocoa." Henry was puffing at full speed. He whistled in horror. "Stop, stop!" he cried, but it was too late. Henry's driver and fireman had jumped clear before the crash, but the driver, fireman, and guard from the other train were thrown into the air and landed in the snow. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the fireman complained to Henry. "You silly great engine, you spilled all my cocoa!" "Never mind your cocoa," laughed the driver. But Henry wasn't laughing. A rescue train arrived the next morning. "Don't feel bad, Henry," said the Fat Controller. "It wasn't your fault. Ice and snow forced the signal down. There wasn't anything you could do. I'm sending you to Crewe. It's a wonderful place where sick engines go to feel better. You won't need to test the Welsh coal when you come back. They'll give you a complete overhaul." "Thank you, sir," replied Henry. A few weeks later, Henry returned a different engine. He got a new firebox, brakes, wheels, and a new coat of green paint with red stripes. Everyone cheered him, and Henry felt much better. Now Henry even pulls the express. He always gets there before Thomas. "Hurry up, little Thomas. Us bigger engines can't wait for slow engines," Henry teased, and he ran off. "Whew," said Thomas. "Have you ever seen such a thing?" Both Danny and Clarabelle agree they never have. Henry and Gordon were sad when Thomas left to run his branch line. Without Thomas, they had to shunt their own coaches. James grumbled too. They all complained they didn't get any rest. The coaches laughed at them. "You're lazy and slack! You're lazy and slack!" they sang. The Fat Controller was most annoyed with all the complaining. It is dangerous for tender engines to travel backwards, so at both ends of the line, the Fat Controller put in turntables at the big stations. Tank engines like Thomas don't need it, because they can travel forwards and backwards just fine. Gordon was so stuck up, you would have thought the Fat Controller gave him the tender just to show how special he was. "You don't understand, little Thomas. We tender engines have a position to keep up. It doesn't matter where you go. We are important. And for the Fat Controller to make us shunt coaches and pull trucks and go on some of those dirty sidings, it's not the proper thing." Thomas chuckled and went off to find Annie and Clarabelle. Later, Gordon tried to position himself on the turntable, but with the bad wind and Gordon's bad temper, he wasn't trying. The fireman tried to turn the handle, but Gordon's heavy weight and strong winds prevented it. "We can't turn you," said the driver. "You have to take the next train backwards." "Look, a new tank engine," teased some boys. "Oh, it's only Gordon back to front." "Well, Gordon, playing tank engine I see," called Thomas. "Take my advice, scrap your tender and get a nice bunker." And Thomas took off. James raced by Gordon, laughing at him. Later, James puffed onto the turntable. His small shape allowed him to turn easily. Too easily. The strong wind pushed the turntable too far, and the track lined up to grass rather than a berth. Before anyone could ward James, he puffed backwards and his tender fell off the rails. Gordon saw everything. "Well, James," said Gordon, "playing roundabouts." That night, once James was back on the rails, Gordon, Henry, and James had an indignation meeting. "It's disgraceful what they do to us. First, Gordon can't fit on the turntable, so he has to pull the train backwards. Then James spins too far and comes off the rails, and everyone laughs at him. And worst of all, the Fat Controller makes us shunt. Blech!" "Listen," said Gordon, "I have a plan." And he whispered his plan to the others. "Yes, yes," said James. "That'll show 'em," finished Henry. The three engines had decided to go on strike. The Fat Controller was in his office listening to the noise outside when the station master came in. "Excuse me, sir, but there's trouble in the shed," said the station master. "Well then, I'd better have a look," said the Fat Controller. And he went down to the sheds. "Come on, Henry, it's time for your first train." "Henry isn't going," said Gordon. "We won't shunt like common tank engines. That was Thomas's job. We are important engines. You fetch our coaches, we pull them. Tender engines don't shunt." "Oh, indeed," said the Fat Controller. "We'll see about that. On my railway, engines do as they are told." And he hurried away to find Edward. He soon found Edward shunting trucks in the yard. "Leave those trucks here, Edward. I want you to shunt coaches for me at the station." "Yes, sir," said Edward. "That will be a nice change." "That's a good engine. Come along." And he and Edward left. Edward found coaches for the bigger engines and trains ran as usual. The next day, Edward was looking sad. Then Gordon popped by and wheezed steam at him. "Good gracious," said the Fat Controller. "They all hiss me, sir. They are calling me Black Wheels. I don't have black wheels. Do I, sir?" "No, you don't. But we need to sort this out." And so he left to purchase a new engine. There were lots of engines, but there was only one tank engine. He was small and green. "That's the one," he said. "If I purchase you, do you promise to work hard?" "Oh, yes, sir," said the little engine. "Good. I'll call you Percy. How do you like that name?" "Yes, sir," said Percy. And they left to Percy's new home. "Edward, this is Percy," he said. "Will you show him the ropes?" "Yes, sir," said Edward. The next day, Thomas was called to the yard. The Fat Controller told Thomas, Edward, and Percy that they would be pulling the trains while the tender engines were learning a lesson. "Common tank engines, eh?" said Thomas. "We'll show them." And the three engines worked very hard while Henry, Gordon, and James were all learning their lesson. Thomas the tank engine is very proud of his branch line. He thinks it's the most important part of the whole railway. He has two coaches. They are old and need new paint, but he loves them very much. He calls them Annie and Clarabelle. Annie can only take passengers, but Clarabelle can take passengers, luggage, and the guard. As they run backward and forward along the line, Thomas sings them little songs. And Annie and Clarabelle sing too. When Thomas starts from the station, he sings, "Oh, come along, we're rather late. Oh, come along, we're rather late." And the coaches sing, "We're coming along, we're coming along." Don't mind that Thomas says that to them, because they know he is trying to please the Fat Controller. And they know that Thomas is cross. He's not cross with them. He is cross with the mainline engines who have made him late. One day they had to wait for Henry's train. It was late. Thomas is getting crosser and crosser. "How can I run my line properly if Henry is always late? He doesn't realize that the Fat Controller depends on me." And he whistled impatiently. At last, Henry came. "Where have you been, lazy bones?" asked Thomas crossly. "Oh dear, my system is out of order. No one understands my case. You don't know what I suffer," moaned Henry. "Rubbish," said Thomas. "You're too fat. You need exercise." Lots of people with piles of luggage got out of Henry's train, and they all climbed into Annie and Clarabelle. Thomas had to wait till they were ready. At last, the guard's whistle blew, and Thomas started at once. The guard turned around to jump into his coach and tripped over an old lady's umbrella and fell flat on his face. By the time he had picked himself up, Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle were steaming out of the station. Come along, puffed Thomas, but Clarabelle didn't want to come. "I've lost my nice guard! I've lost my nice guard!" she sobbed. Annie tried to tell Thomas, "We haven't got a guard! We haven't got a guard!" But he was hurrying and wouldn't listen. "Oh, come along! Oh, come along!" he puffed impatiently. Annie and Clarabelle tried to put on their brakes, but couldn't without the guard. "Where is our guard? Where is our guard?" they cried. Thomas didn't stop until he came to a signal. "Bother that signal," said Thomas. "What's the matter?" "I don't know," said his driver. "The guard will tell us in a minute." They waited and waited, but the guard didn't come. "Peep, peep, peep! Where is the guard?" whistled Thomas. "We've left him behind," sobbed Annie and Clarabelle together. The driver, firemen, and passengers looked. And there was the guard, running as fast as he could along the line, with his flags in one hand and his whistle in the other. Everybody cheered him. He was very hot, so he sat down and had a drink, and he told them all about it. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Guard," said Thomas. "It wasn't your fault, Thomas. It was the old lady's umbrella. Look, the signal is down. Let's make up the lost time." Annie and Clarabelle were so pleased to have their guard again, they sang, as fast as you like, to Thomas, all the way, and they reached the end of the line quicker than ever before. Henry, James, and Gordon were miserable. They had been shut up in the shed. and they all missed pulling trains. At last, the fat controller arrived. "I hope you are sorry." "Yes, we are, sir," they said. "Good. Now your trains are due. We have a new tank engine called Percy, and I don't want you to make fun of any other engine." "Yes, sir," they said. Then he told Edward, Thomas, and Percy that they could go play on the branch line for a few days. Gordon, James, and Henry got their trains ready without a fuss. Percy watched the big engines take their trains. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," he called, and they got very cross. Later, Percy shunted some trucks onto a siding and puffed back onto the main line. He waited at a signal box for the signalman to change the point so he could go back home and clear the line for Gordon. Edward warned Percy to blow his whistle to let the signalman know he was there, but he wasn't paying attention, and he forgot to blow his whistle. He waited and waited, but the points didn't change. "Pee, pee, pee!" Percy whistled in horror. There was Gordon coming down the line with the express. "Oh, get out of the way!" yelled Gordon. Percy shut his eyes. His driver and fireman jumped clear, expecting a crash. Gordon slammed on the brakes. He came closer and closer. Finally, he stopped. "Percy, what are you doing?" Percy was too frightened. His wheels were spinning in reverse. Without a driver or fireman to stop his wheels, Percy took off. He raced down the line. "Help! Help! Gordon is chasing me!" Soon, Percy realized that Gordon wasn't chasing him and that he didn't have a driver or fireman. He couldn't stop and raced on. "Help! Help! I can't stop!" he called. He went up Gordon's hill and right down the other side. A nice signalman knew Percy was coming and set the points onto a siding that led to a bank of rocks. He rolled into the pile of rocks nice and gently. "I want to stop. I want to stop. I have stopped." "Never mind, Percy. You'll have a drink and some coal and you'll feel a new engine." Soon, Gordon arrived. "Well done, Percy. You started so quickly you stopped a nasty accident." And Gordon pulled Percy out of the bank. "I'm sorry I was cheeky, and you were clever to stop," said Percy, and Gordon helped him home. Percy is still cheeky, but he is always careful when he's on the main line. Toby and Henrietta are enjoying their new jobs in soda, but they are both old and need new paint. James would often make fun of them. "Bleh, what dirty objects," he said. "James," asked Toby, "why are you red?" "Because I'm a Splendid Red Engine, ready for anything. You'll never see my paint dirty." "Oh, even ready for bootlaces?" said Toby cheekily. James huffed angrily and left the station. It was such an insult to be reminded of the time his guard used bootlaces and newspaper to mend a hole in one of his coaches. Later, James would take a slow goods train, stopping at every station to pick up and let off trucks. James hated slow goods. Dirty trucks from dirty sidings. Starting with only a few, he picked up more and more trucks until he had trouble pulling it. "Come on, come on, come on," he shouted. "Don't make such a fuss! Don't make such a fuss!" groaned the trucks. "The sooner I'm done with you, the sooner I can get back to pulling coaches." The trucks were tired of being bumped and decided to get back at James. Soon they were climbing Gordon's Hill. At the top of the hill, all trains had to put on their brakes. James had an accident with the trucks when he first came to Sodor and should have remembered this, but he didn't. The truck's chance had come. "Wait, James, wait," said his driver, but James wouldn't wait. He was thinking what he would say to Toby when they next met. The truck started pushing him down the hill. On, said the trucks. "I've got to stop! I've got to stop!" said James. Through the station they thundered, and disaster lay ahead. Something sticky splashed all over James. He had smashed into 2 tar-filled tankers and some stone trucks. James was covered in tar and stones. Percy and Toby were sent to help and came as quickly as they could. "Look here, Percy. Whatever is that dirty object?" "That's James, didn't you know?" "It's James's shape, but he's a Splendid Red Engine. You never see his paint dirty." James pretended he didn't hear. Toby and Percy helped clear away the unhurt trucks and helped James home. The Fat Controller congratulated Toby and Percy, and then he turned to James. "Fancy letting your trucks run away, James. I am surprised. Toby, you and Henrietta shall have a new coat of paint." "Oh, thank you, sir," said Toby. All James could do was watch Toby happily puff away to the works.